Welcome to Everything is Dead, the show where we challenge the myths of B2B and uncover how go to market professionals are thriving in channels everyone says are dead. Today we're diving into paid ads with Canberk Beker, CEO and founder at Roasted. Welcome to the show today, mate.
Hi, Ben. Thank you for having me. You are the first person calling me CEO. It sounds nice, not gonna lie.
Yeah, I was gonna say, well, you are. You are technically right, CEO and founder at this point, which is always great. And congratulations on the new business launch, obviously. So I'm gonna start off with a statement, and I'd love to hear your reaction to the statement. So, what would you say to the statement when people say paid ads are dead? What would your reaction be to that statement?
I would probably just laugh. Calling Pete as dead would be same as calling Earth flat.
Yeah. Okay. Well, fair enough. So, like, totally unbelievable, I guess. Then, from your standpoint, and so, like, the whole purpose of this is, again, I believe that every go-to-market strategy, when done well, is effective, and typically, like, people aren't having success for a certain channel because they're not doing it right fundamentally. And so, with that statement, paid ads being the thing that you're an expert on, how are you succeeding with paid ads in 2024, and maybe specifically kind of what strategies or tools are you utilizing to make it a success?
Yeah, obviously, it is really easy to go wrong with paytests. We can consider paytests dead if we don't execute well. But I think we need to consider this case by case by company, case by case by their audience and ICP. Like now, I'm dealing with multiple clients, and some of them, for example, targeting to a more traditional audience. And for this audience, like paytests don't really work because this audience doesn't spend time on online media. This company is actually getting way better results through events. So like for that company, if we try to apply the paid media strategy that we applied to Hockey Stack or Cognizant, it won't work. And then we will end up calling paid as debt
Yep.
for this company. But also I'm working with other companies whose audience is specifically on paid media, on LinkedIn, on Facebook. And for these companies, we know for a fact that events don't work because this audience doesn't go to events. This audience doesn't really engage with direct mailing or anything. This is the paid media audience. So when we think of this case by case, we come to a realization that we need to build a new strategy for each company. And like not only some audience doesn't spend time on paid media and some does. It is also like some audience just on is on Facebook. Some of them are just on LinkedIn, or some of them are just watching TV. So we need to be connecting them through CTV. So we just need to understand companies, and it feels like when I speak with other marketeers, they don't really want to do that. They just
It's
have this
you know what
playbook.
it's I'm smiling as you're saying it because it's kind of like marketing 101, and I use the expression spheres of influence, which is fundamentally marketing concept of like who is your target customer, and then you need to map out each channel that they consume
Yeah.
content through fundamentally, right? Which for me has always been fundamentally marketing 101, because to your point, without understanding truly who your ICP is and where they consume content, how do you even know,
I know, right?
like,
Like
how do
we
you know to,
shouldn't we shouldn't be even discussing this. Like we
yeah,
shouldn't be discussing this in 2024.
yeah.
But when we think about it, like when I take over new accounts, I see the same playbook applied by the same agencies without understanding the ICP, without understanding the market, because they don't really want to deal with it. Like when you think of, for example, the agency lifetime, it is like 6 months in total. So they just try to apply their playbook for 6 months and they do it. Or like even with paid media, in-house paid media managers, like they don't want to be the hero, like they don't want to come with a new idea. They're like, okay, that's what my boss is asking from me, and I'm just going to do it.
Yeah.
And it just feels bonkers because, as you said, like it just feels like 101 marketing, but we are not seeing anything about it.
So, like, I guess when we get to like the strategies, right, for 2024 and what's working for you, maybe you could walk me through. Let's say hypothetically, I'm one of your new clients, right? What kind of exercises or what questions are you asking or what activities are you doing to actually get those fundamental pieces figured out? Like, what do you kind of take? What journey do you take them through? I guess.
Yeah, obviously the first question is the ICP. Who is their ICP and who is their anti-ICP? And even though this is a really simple question, the answers I'm getting are weird. Like everyone thinks everyone is their ICP. They're like, okay, we are targeting marketing managers, but we can also target CSMs. We can also target CEOs. No, like you might have multiple ICPs, but who is their main ICP? And most of the companies actually don't even really understand this. So this is the first thing I'm trying to uncover. Who is their real ICP? Who is their product for? Who actually gets the best from your product? Secondly, who is your target addressable market? Like which companies, which industries you are targeting? Again, they're like, oh, we can sell to financial services, but we can
The
also
whole of
sell
North, the
software.
whole of North America, every company. Yeah, it's like sure.
Exactly. Like the first thing is to understand, okay, who is the real ICP, and then who is the real company target. And once I understand that, the third question is, who is your competitor? Who is your main competitor, and what does the competitive landscape look like? And how do you compare yourself against them? Like, are they your direct competitor, or are we just having some similarities?
Like a
And once
tangent. Yeah, yeah.
yeah, like for example, I'm just going to give an example of Cognism. Cognism was a direct competitor to ZoomInfo, but technically it could have been a competitor to Sixth Sense in terms of the intent data. But yeah, like I wouldn't target Sixth Sense. I would target ZoomInfo. So I'm trying to understand it. Like if there are competitors who I can target and who I shouldn't be targeting. And once I understand these three main concepts, I then reverse engineer their customer funnel. So what had been working for them, and what had not been working for them. And in 99% of the cases, what I find out in their CRM is different than what they told me about their ICP and their target market.
Yeah.
So after that happens, I'm like, okay, this is what your data tells me. Are you sure about your ICP? And again, in 99% of the cases, they're like, yeah, you're right. And once I got that data, I start building the plan. So like, if I understand that their ICP is spending time on LinkedIn, then the
Let's
strategy is
let,
big.
let's dig into that because I think that's like a really important point though that you just made, which is like, okay, let's just say hypothetically, me and you go through that exercise, and we're pretty well set on like, okay, we sell to this site, this profile, this market, like really tightly defined definition. How do you figure out what channels they're active on? Is it manual? Like, do you use tools? Like, how do you go through that process of like of channel identification? I guess.
So for some audiences, I know. For example, if I'm going to target the marketing audience or like sales
Yeah.
audience in the
Yeah.
software industry, I know. But if it is an audience that I'm not familiar with, I use Factoro.
Okay. Cool. Yeah, yeah, yeah. And you'll just plug it in, and then it will just give you a readout of like hit like here's where you should be targeting fundamentally.
Yeah, and actually their package is like $50, and it is the best investment I have done in my life. Like you can
Okay.
literally check by website, and obviously it doesn't tell you the exact channels that they are following, exact subreddits that they are following, but it gives you an idea. Like you can see if they're on Reddit more than if they're on LinkedIn, if they're actually visiting some specific websites. Then once they have that data, you can also reverse engineer that data back.
Okay, cool. And then like let's say I guess on the opposite side, right? Like from a channel identification standpoint, because I'd imagine there's some cases to your point, you get bought in because people are like, we need to do paid ads, right? It's just something we need to try. And you go in and actually it's like people aren't online. Like your ICP, have you had to have those tough
Yeah.
conversations where it's like, I'm disqualifying you as a candidate and I'm telling you why paid ads won't work, right? Fundamentally.
Yeah, like if they have never done paid ads, or they have never had success with paid ads, I'm like, okay, let's not have a retainer, but I'm going to audit your account. I'm going to audit your audience, and then I'm going to decide whether we should be on a retainer or not.
Yeah, love it.
But obviously, this process takes my time, so I don't do it for free. I'm like, okay, this is what it was going to cost you,
It's going to
and if
save
you're
you
okay
money
with
in
it,
the long run, though. Fundamentally, right?
yeah.
Like if you've been tied into like a 6 month contract or whatever it might be. Yeah, yeah,
And the thing is, when I sign a client, I have this value prop. Like, if you don't see the better return on ad spend in the next 60 days, you get the entire money back.
love it.
So like, if I do that, I need to make sure that I'm gonna be successful.
Yeah,
And
yeah, exactly
like,
right.
if they are targeting an audience that does not exist in paid media, then it's a waste of my time. It's a waste of their money.
Yeah, and so like let's just go hypothetical, right? So you've done your pre work, so to speak. You figured out that actually I'm targeting a market and audience, and so now there's a fairly good understanding that paid ads probably is a good tactic, a good channel to test. What happens then? Like what is the next step once you've defined this is a good audience to target with paid ads?
Then the question is, how does the marketing team measure it by? Like, is it the pipeline? Is it the number of leads? Is it what? Then, depends on their answer, I start building the strategy. So, like, if they are measured by the number of MQLs, then the strategy is more on the demand capture side, more on the PPC side, and more about creating those ebooks, creating those webinar templates and everything. But if it is the pipeline, then I create the demand generation strategy. So I actually start working on their website. I start working on their product features and everything, and then I built the entire demand generation engine for them.
Cool. Love it. So that's, I mean, that's awesome. So like there's very much a clear tie to first, is this a good strategy? And then secondarily, and it's smart because fundamentally, if you're able to understand how they quantify success, you can back into that, right? That's the metric that's going to move the needle the most, be most applicable to them, which I kind of love. When you think about like copy and messaging and things like that, how do you approach that side? Because I think actually, if you're a business that doesn't understand paid ads, it's like we're just going to sign up to LinkedIn ads account. We're just going to create something on Canva, right, with an image and something we think works and trying to chuck it out there. Like that for me has always been a pretty common story when I talk to people about ads. Is like we're going to try it. So here's what we're going to do: sign up for a Canva account, put $1,000 in. Who cares? We'll test it, right? Like how do you go through both like creative but then also like the budget, right? Because there's also a component of budget that goes into paid ads.
So I had this experience with one of my clients before actually I went all solo because I had been having some clients since like Cognizant.
Yep.
And I had to think like, okay, I built this perfect demand gen model. I spent like 2.5 months to do that. And then as I said, I ended up getting like Canvas. And you can easily see that, okay, they were created like last night, and nobody actually paid any attention, although I waited for like 2 months to get those creatives. And after that point, now I add this clause to my contracts. Like, I'm allowed to reject the creatives I have, and I'm allowed to push back.
Okay.
And I should tell this even in the discovery call, like, if you hire me, you got to listen to me. Like, I'm not going to be just running your ass. You need to respect what I recommend. Therefore, I also at this class, like, if you don't do that, I reserve the right to not give you a refund, and I reserve to
I mean, it's
cancel the contract.
clever. Yeah, and so like I mean, one, I think that's extremely smart. If we think about like the tactical though, right, which is what makes good creative, what makes good. So, what would be the criteria that you're making a decision on as to whether reject it or approve it? Like yeah, maybe give me some kind of pointers there.
So I think we need to think about this on the subject of the creative, like the team of the creative. And let me first walk you through on how I create those briefs and what I think when I build those briefs. Like when we think of the demand gen model, uh, I think demand gen model with 5 different approaches. Like the first approach starts with thought leadership content, which is the top of the funnel content. Then the product value content, you still make your audience problem aware, solution aware. Then the social proof content, actual website content, and retargeting content. And I built this strategy by looking at what they already have on the website. So, like, if they have product features, like obviously they have product features.
Yeah.
So I basically create the briefs by looking at those product features, and I created different POV. I created different team for each of their creatives. So, like, when I create those briefs, I know what I have in my mind, and also I give them a couple of examples. Like, the good thing about it, there's LinkedIn library, there's Facebook library, so you can easily find similar things and you can show them. And like, if what I get is completely different than what I have briefed, then
Yeah.
there's like, okay, I didn't want it.
There's a
And that's
misconnect.
why,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, and that's why I try to over communicate in that stage. I'm like, okay, here's the brief. Please let me know if your designer has any questions. Please let me know if you have any questions. And I try to really over communicate because the other problem I encounter time to time is that they end up creating all of those scripts. Like I ask for like 50 creatives, and they come to me with 50 creatives without even consulting me. And
And
It's
then
like
they're all
all
wrong and it
over.
has to restart again, so to speak. Yeah, I get you. So like, I mean, that's an interesting point, and again, it gets into the tactical aspect of ads. Like, let's say you're doing this in house, right? So let's say you've got an
Mhm.
in house team, you've got a growth market that's working on the paid ad strategy. Your opinion is you should be very closely in lockstep with the creative team. And so, like, the briefs that you're producing for these projects, they must be super granular. Like, are you really, like, really telling them, like, line, like,
Yeah.
exactly how you want it fundamentally?
Yeah, like I learned it from the hard way because people don't really understand what you have on your mind unless they had been working with you for a long time. Like now I'm working with a couple of designers for the last couple of years, and if I work with them, I don't really need to be really exact. Like they understand what I have in my
They
mind.
know exactly what you're looking for.
Yeah,
Yeah,
but if I just get a company as a new client and if they have their own designer, it needs to be laser focused. And that's why I'm trying to be really, really clear and short about it.
yeah, love it, mate. Yeah, I mean the process is great. So you've kind of ironed that out. Let's let's walk through like again a scenario of brand new company, never done paid ads before. What's the kind of decision making criteria between hiring somebody like you, agency, or hiring an in house team? What would you recommend companies do? And when is that pivot point? Like, would you use an agency as like a let's pay some money, see if it works before hiring somebody full time, or how would you kind of approach that conversation?
Okay, I have multiple comments on that. Firstly, for example, I never take on a client if they haven't had a marketing experience before.
Okay.
That's something that I disqualify because if they haven't run any marketing motion, their expectations are always high and they want to spend like $1 and want to generate like
I agree. I mean,
$50.
it's kind of like cold email, right? In the way that
Exactly.
if you haven't got a successful customer case study, there's almost like you have no messaging. So you'd almost should just test with the messaging before you actually understand and sending out cold email, fundamentally, right?
Exactly. But in terms of the agency, yeah, I would never get an agency. And that's why I'm trying to distance myself from the agency term, because I'm one person, I'm not an agency. Because the fundamental problem with agency is that they are just following their own playbook. And this is actually what bringing us to what we discussed in the beginning. Like, they don't create a strategy for you
Yep.
unless you pay them 35K per month because otherwise you just get a paid media manager and they just follow the playbook. And if you want to create something internally properly, then you need to hire someone who is good.
Yep.
And there are two things about it. The first thing, can you afford that person full time? Secondly, what will you offer to that person so that they will come to you? Because probably they have a proper job that they're happy with. Uh,
Yep.
and the other thing, and sometimes people don't really believe me when I said that, creating a strategy is not that hard. Like one needs to spend a couple of months to build that strategy, but once the strategy is built, you can really easily optimize it and you can actually hire internal people, like you can hire managers instead of CMOs, and those people will just make sure that that system is working and being
The
optimized.
strategy is enacted fundamentally, right? So like
Yeah,
I think what you're saying is like people almost flip those in terms of priority, right? Like they will dive straight into the doing instead of spending enough time preparing and doing the strategic side of things, right?
100%. And if you get someone to create that strategy, again, which will take a couple of months, after that, you don't really need that person. Like that person can just stay as a consultant, maybe a couple of hours every week to make sure that it is still working. When the time comes, update that strategy, optimize that strategy. But again, like after a couple of months, it just needs a marketing manager, maybe a paid media manager to make sure that it is working. That's it.
And like when I think about ads, obviously there's a money component to it, right? Which is you need to invest and you need to add money into it. Like the other mistake I see people making is making an investment, not changing anything, and then again saying it's not working. And so how do you think about like the actual dollars and cents from a like do you suggest a sliding scale? Do you test certain budgets in certain areas and then scale it up? Like what's your approach to the actual dollars and cents kind of paid ads motion as well?
Yeah, like obviously I try to apply the budget that the teams have. So like if they have 20K budget, I don't come up with like a plan with 50K. But I always at the buffer. Like I'm like, this is what we can have for 20K. For example, we could have 20 different campaigns normally, but since you have 20K, we can only have five campaigns. However, should you want to scale in the next 3 months, this is the plan, this is the forecast.
Yep.
But like the campaign plan needs to be applied by their budget. And I definitely hate the idea of, I don't know, having 20 campaigns with like $10 daily budget, because having five campaigns with like $50 daily budget, $100 daily budget will give those campaigns better room to scale.
Yeah, and
And
I think that's the point, right? Like it's not so much like the overall budget, but it's per campaign. So it's not because
exactly.
like and is there a number? Like, is there a number that if a client isn't willing to invest X amount, you're like, well, we can't actually test it fully. Like, is there a specific number in your mind where you'll disqualify somebody?
In terms of the monthly budget,
Yeah, correct. Yeah.
yeah, I never take on a client that has less than 25, 30K budget.
Okay. Cool. And why is it that number? It's just in your experience that's the amount you need to really truly test it, or
Like, if they are spending less, then their investment to my own cost wouldn't make sense.
okay.
And in order for me to show my own return on investment, I need to be working with a proper budget, because like if you give me 5K, I can probably generate you X amount of money, but that money wouldn't justify my own cost.
Yeah, I get you. So it's more of like an ROI equation for you, more so
Yeah.
than a dollar figure. That makes a lot of sense. It's interesting because you mentioned at the start, like one of the biggest mistakes that you see people make is like just not picking the right channel and actually just saying like, let's try ads when their audience isn't online. Outside of like the fundamentals of, figuring out your ICP, figuring out the channel and all that type of stuff. Are there any other like fundamental mistakes that you constantly see either in your consulting business
Yeah.
now or roles?
Marketeers, most of the marketeers, not even some, most of the marketeers are lack of basic understanding of economical principles.
Okay.
uh, like marketers need to be thinking of the entire revenue journey. But what I'm seeing is that campaigns have been left because they were generating MQLs, but those MQLs were not converting. And because those campaigns were generating MQLs, they didn't allocate the budget that they needed to allocate to the campaigns that might actually have generated more pipeline.
Yeah.
Uh, and unfortunately, what I'm seeing is that like most of marketers don't really see the bigger picture. They just want to try to save the day and make sure that they just follow the orders. Like they don't want to be the hero. They don't want to do anything new. They don't want to change the status quo. And that's the thing that bothers me the most, because it is not like they don't want it, I think. Like it cannot be possible. I think nobody wants to deal with it, because obviously there's a chance that what they recommend might not work, and it's a risk, and nobody wants to take that risk.
Yeah, I love it, mate. Yeah, I love it. It's true. Like I think it's something that probably is not the reason I think that's a problem is I think a lot of marketers come up in the startup model where it's like growth at all costs. It's like we need leads, which equate to revenue, instead of actually thinking about lifetime value. Because typically with startups, it's all about the next day rather
Yeah.
than like a year's time, fundamentally, right? So I've always laughed a little bit about that, which is interesting. I mean, I guess fundamentally from this conversation, and if I'm recapping things correctly, good ads and the success to having like a really good strategy in 2025 is almost first of all go back to the basics, really start to map out your ICP, your market, your pain point, analyze, and you mentioned tools like SparkToro, analyze whether they're actually going to consume online media, because that's going to be one of the big telltale signs as to whether it's going to work or whether it isn't going to work. Your other point is like make sure that once you have your market identified, creative and design becomes imperative and really starting to focus in on that. And then to your point as well, very experimental in terms of the budget and running campaigns once you see success scaling out. Is that a fair summation of kind of your key points from this call, I guess?
100%. And I will add one more thing. Sometimes your channels might be doing well, but it does not mean that if you double the budget, you will double the results. That's another problem that I'm seeing. Like some of the channels, you might just be maxing out right now. And you might have 50K audience, and maybe you have like, I don't know, $200 daily budget, and that budget is probably enough for that audience. And most of the times I'm seeing that the executive team is like, okay, we need to grow by 2x. Therefore, we are going to give you 2x more budget, and you need to improve the budget on LinkedIn by 2x. But no, like you cannot just assume that if you increase their budget by 2x, they are going to increase their results by 2x.
How do you know that? Like, and again, this is me just asking like a question like that, but like people, some people do think that, right? And
Mhm.
it is actually marketing again 101, where you find a channel that works, you should invest more to scale that channel out. But where does that tipping point occur in your opinion between it still being like investable versus we've kind of tapped it out?
I think we need to split this by the channel intent. Like if you think of PPC capture demand channels like Google, I mean, it's easy. Like just look at the search volumes, and this might be that we are already generating all of the search volumes. We are actually getting all of the search impression shares, and technically we can expand to different keywords, but those keywords probably are not going to be profitable. That's
Not
the
as
thing you can
effective.
understand. Yeah,
Yeah,
like
yeah,
because if they were profitable, you would have already targeted them.
yep.
On LinkedIn, it is more about frequency. Like imagine you are already reaching out 50, 60% of your target addressable market. And on LinkedIn, the like when you think of your TAM, probably 75% of your TAM is active on LinkedIn. Like only 75% of the audience you see on your campaign manager is active on LinkedIn. So like if you're already reaching 60, 65% of this audience with like 2, 3 frequency, means that it's there, like it's there.
Yep.
And
Absolutely.
then again, you can try to expand to a new persona, to new ICP, but then this also requires you to create a new POV for that ICP. You
resets
cannot just,
resets it fundamentally, right? Like it's,
yeah.
I mean, it's so true. Like having one, again, like one use case that works extremely well. It works well because of a reason. Like you've done your research. Again, you've gone through the fundamentals, and it's not like a copy and paste job. It's like you start from the start again and then scale it out. So I think that's a really good part. Well, cool. I really appreciate. Like I said, I think one of the purposes of this show is to bring people on that are driving success, and I know you've had success both a Hockey Stack, a Cognism, and now in your consulting role. Is there any other tip you'd leave the audience with in terms of paid ads they head into 2025? Any kind of last takeaway or thought for the audience?
Yeah, I think the other tip will be all of the ad platforms are trying to automate their processes, like they are trying to implement AI, and they are trying to make your job easier, marketer's job easier. But I think we are far from there. Like we still need to be controlling our campaigns manually. We still need to be optimizing manually without putting any trust to their AI.
Yeah, love it. Love it, mate. Well, this has been brilliant. Really appreciate you coming on, mate. I know you're a respected voice in the space, and so everybody can follow you on LinkedIn, and we'll add the company page to the note transcripts as well. But for now, mate, really appreciate it, and thanks for coming on.
Thank you for having me.